a confined garden.
This was a small garden.
So yeah, I watched it, and for those people who have seen, it felt like The Martian, with you mapping out your calories and how much you were going to get. So yeah, talk a little about that.
Yeah, so the idea there, that was 2019. So that was sort of before Epic was doing well as like sort of a solopreneur style business at that point in time. But it was just sort of a YouTuber's business, right? And so I was like, I want to try a type of content I hadn't tried before. Everything I had ever done is, how do you grow lettuce? How do you grow tomatoes? Why is your compost not heating up? Like sort of just question answer, probably because I came from SEO and blogging, and that's how you do that. And so I was like, what if I just try this? Because if I can do it, anyone watching it should have the confidence that they can grow, something very basic at their own home. And so the idea, and this is when I was at I was living in Hillcrest, which is like a little north of downtown San Diego, this small front yard garden. It's like 15 feet by maybe 30 feet, which is for sure not enough to live off of for a month, for sure. But I was like, well, what could I do realistically? So I gave myself 90-day lead time because I had to grow something to actually do this. And I was like, okay, well, I'm this tall. I weigh this much. This is how many calories you need. Is it even possible for me to grow that many calories? And it barely was. I had a little extra space I used at a friend's house. And I was like, okay, well, if it is, then what do I grow? And the only answer in 90 days is potatoes.
Yeah.
So that's where you get the Martian. And fortunately, potatoes don't require a lot of nutrients, don't require a lot of resources to grow. And they're sort of effortless. Like once you plant them, they just sort of do it. So I was like, okay, I think I can do this. So I grew mostly potatoes, but I set myself up this rule of I can fish if I want to, but I didn't really know how to fish that well.
Well, I saw this. You went to tiny little.
Oh yeah, it got crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did learn how to like surf fish, but that wasn't as reliable. It takes a lot of time to do. And so fortunately, when I did the challenge was June, in the full moon from like March to June in San Diego or in California on the coast, there's these little fish called grunions, and they're a fish that spawns on the beach. So it was like they just delivered themselves to you.
Wait, they're like, explain that to me, because I don't understand
where
food comes from. They're not just flopping around on the beach.
That's exactly what they're doing. Yeah,
no.
That's exactly what they're doing. It's crazy. So it's one of the most wild. If you didn't live in Cali and grow up this way, which I did, and being half Asian, like the only other people out there on the beach are my Filipinos. They're out there scooping buckets because they're eating it. And so I was like, I'm just returning to form here. But anyways, so yeah, what they'll do is on full moons, it's like March through June, they will just come up. The females will come up and they'll burrow in the wet sand and they'll make a little hole. And then the males will come up and they all just deposit their sperm in the hole. And then the females sort of wait there and the eggs get fertilized. And then eventually, in however many days after, the little grunions in the next tide run up just come back down.
How do they survive on the beach?
They don't. I mean, they will come up, right? Like they come in with the tide. So you're looking at the tide.
Oh, the tide brings them in. And while with just a tiny, tiny amount of water, they're hanging out digging holes. So you can come, you can just scoop them at high tide.
It's the craziest thing you'll ever see. So like the tide comes in and you're like, this tide looks a little different because there's a bunch of silvery stuff in there. And then they just stay instead of swimming back out. And so you probably saw the clips, right?
It was wild.
Thousands of silvery fish. And so the way Cali works is if you use no implements, like no nets, no nothing, you can collect as much as you need to use to eat, which is a fuzzy legislation. But so I'm out there.
You needed a lot of grunions.
I needed a lot. And the problem is like, sure, you might get a bucket of grunions, but like you don't have the energy really when you're living off literally just potatoes and lettuce to like fillet every little. It's not like you're getting a big
They're not
tuna.
boneless. Yeah.
They're not boneless. And so, so I went out and scooped them, literally competing with this Vietnamese woman who had a bag. And she was like a much better eye than me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I guess I'll just follow her around and like try to find them. So there's a four-day phase. And on the fourth day is the full moon. Those were the most of them. I did not know that. So I was there on day 1 and 2. So you kind of had to like run and pick your spots. So I'm running after this Vietnamese woman, like, and she's like, what are you doing, dude? Like, this is my spot. But yeah, picked a bunch of those up, did some foraging around the city.
Was that more effort to eat? Like, because I imagine, like you said, the filleting and the bones and all that kind of stuff.
It was annoying to scale it. Yeah, because you got to scale the fish. But what I ended up doing, which was weirdly, this food slapped. It was potatoes, grunions, and I had some onions I had grown, like green onions.
Green onions.
And then you mix it all together and you make like a latke style meal, which is like weirdly dense in calories and like pretty fulfilling.
There you go.
So it ended up going okay. But still, over the month, I lost 13, 15 pounds, something like that. Yeah,
I was struck by how We talk, you've watched the podcast. I appreciate your support.
Yeah.
Factory farms,